All right, buckle up, because we're diving headfirst into the world of the Tesla Cybertruck. And judging by the stack of articles you all sent in, it's obvious you're ready to go deep on this thing.
Yeah, it's been making headlines for sure.
It's not just a truck, is it? It's a statement. Some would even say the future of pickups.
Others, well, let's just say the jury's still out.
The jury's out? Yeah, opinions are as varied as the paint jobs you can't get on this thing.
That's a good way to put it.
But for anyone who needs a quick refresh, we're talking about an electric powertrain, a range that supposedly leaves gas guzzlers in the dust, and of course, that stainless steel body.
You know what's so fascinating about the Cybertruck is that Tesla's not just trying to improve the pickup, they're aiming for a total reinvention.
Yeah, they're not known for subtlety.
No, this isn't some subtle upgrade. It's about as subtle as, I don't know, as a sledgehammer in a showroom.
That's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
But you've been digging into these articles, so let's get into the nuts and bolts of what they're really saying.
Absolutely.
And I think we have to start with, well, the elephant in the room. Or should I say, the very large truck in the garage.
Yeah, and that's a key point right there. You highlighted a bunch of articles that mention the Cybertruck size and how that might be a deal breaker for some people, especially in cities.
Yeah, forget about finding a parking spot. Some of these articles even question if it can fit in a standard parking garage.
Exactly. It's like, forget parallel parking. This thing needs its own zip code.
It's true. But it's not just about city driving, right? You also flagged some concerns about the Cybertruck's weight and how that might affect its range, especially compared to smaller electric vehicles.
It's almost like physics is butting heads with marketing.
How so?
Well, electric does often mean efficient, but when you're hauling around that much stainless steel, it's going to take a lot more energy to get it moving.
Right, you're basically driving a tank.
Well, you actually highlighted a study that compared its energy consumption to a small tank, which kind of makes you think twice about that whole saving the planet argument.
Okay, hold on. Let's unpack that a bit. So the Cybertruck is electric, but its sheer size means it might not be as eco-friendly as some people might think.
Precisely. It highlights a really important point about electric vehicles. Bigger doesn't always mean better when it comes to efficiency.
It really makes you wonder if Tesla's prioritizing looks over functionality here, especially with that stainless steel exoskeleton.
And that exoskeleton, well, that's a double-edged sword.
How so?
On the one hand, it's tough, that's undeniable. But, you know, those articles you sent over, they bring up some valid concerns about maintenance and repairs.
Yeah, scratches, dents, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Stainless steel, it's prone to dings and scratches. And on a vehicle this large, well, those imperfections would be hard to miss.
Probably a nightmare to buff out, too.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
And speaking of things that might be less durable than they seem, you also sent over those articles about the shatterproof glass and, well,
Let's just say its debut didn't exactly inspire confidence.
that's one way to put it.
Okay, so we've got a potentially massive, energy-hungry truck with a shiny exterior that may be more delicate than it looks. And did I mention those production delays?
Oh, yeah, the delays. Which actually brings us to another crucial point, the price tag.
Right, because those early promises of an affordable Cybertruck, well, they haven't aged so well, have they?
To put it lightly, they've gone the way of bell-bottoms.
Not a good look.
Yeah.
But it's not just about inflation and material costs, right? Those are issues with any vehicle launch these days. But you specifically pointed out some articles suggesting those early Cybertruck price estimates might have been, well, a tad optimistic.
Tad optimistic is one way to put it. Yeah, and those repeated delays haven't helped matters.
So what you're saying is we could be talking about a final price tag that's significantly higher than what was initially advertised.
That's what many analysts are predicting.
Talk about sticker shock. But hey, maybe those buyers will be reassured by Tesla's reputation for, well, tech.
And there's going to be a lot of it in the Cybertruck. You weren't kidding when you said those articles made it clear this truck is going to be absolutely loaded with tech.
It's practically a computer on wheels, which I guess raises an interesting question, right? I mean, you highlighted a few articles pointing out that at the end of the day, some truck owners, they just want a vehicle that's reliable and easy to use. And loading a workhorse like a truck up with potentially unnecessary tech features, well, some people might see it as overkill.
It's a bit like putting a spoiler on a tractor.
Exactly. It might look cool, but is it really necessary when you're out in the field?
Not really. And that actually leads us to another concern that you flagged, repairs.
Right. Because Tesla's repair network isn't exactly famous for being affordable or convenient. And with the Cybertruck's unique construction, I imagine things could get even more complicated.
You're telling me you actually underlined a quote from one expert comparing it to finding a mechanic who can repair a time machine.
That's a little worrying. And speaking of the future, what about resale value? Will the Cybertruck be a collector's item or a depreciation disaster?
It's hard to say, really. The Cybertruck's design is such a wild card. It could become a classic, like age, like fine wine.
Or it could be like that carton of milk you forgot about in the back of the fridge.
Let's hope it's closer to the wine. But you also found some articles that question whether Tesla's supercharger network is even equipped to handle a beast like the Cybertruck, especially on long hauls.
That's a good point. I mean, range anxiety is one thing, but range anxiety when you're towing a camper through the desert, that's a whole other level of stress.
Exactly, and you highlighted a study that showed that towing heavy loads, it really eats into the range of electric vehicles.
It makes sense, right? I mean, the more weight you're pulling, the more energy you're going to use. So for people who use their trucks for work or, serious hauling, that's definitely a factor to consider.
Especially since even finding a supercharger that can accommodate the Cybertruck's, shall we say, unique dimensions, that could be a challenge in itself.
It's not just about the charging infrastructure either. It's also about the time it takes to charge.
That's right. Even with a supercharger, it takes longer to charge an electric vehicle than it does to fill up a gas tank.
So for long trips, especially if you're towing something, that could add a significant amount of time to your journey.
Absolutely. And you also flagged some articles that raise some concerns about the Cybertruck's safety, particularly that angular design.
Yeah, those sharp edges, they do look a little intimidating, especially from a pedestrian's point of view.
I know what you mean. But on the other hand, stainless steel is incredibly strong, right?
That's true, but strength isn't everything when it comes to safety.
You're right. Crash tests and real-world data, those will ultimately determine how the Cybertruck performs in different crash scenarios. You even found an article that talked about the potential danger those sharp edges could pose to pedestrians in certain types of accidents.
It's a scary thought. On a more practical note, though, what about visibility? Those narrow windows don't exactly scream panoramic views.
No, they don't. Several articles did raise concerns about the Cybertruck's limited visibility, both for the driver and for other drivers on the road. That shape could easily create blind spots that make accidents more likely.
It's like trying to navigate a parking lot in a tank. Cool factor aside, I think I'd want to be extra cautious. But amidst all of these potential drawbacks, it's important to remember that the Cybertruck isn't the only electric truck on the market.
That's right. In fact, you found some great articles about the Ford F-150 Lightning and the Rivian R1T.
So for those of us who aren't quite ready to embrace our inner cyberpunk, there are other options out there.
Exactly. The F-150 Lightning, for example, it builds on Ford's long history of making reliable and capable trucks, which might appeal to those more traditional buyers who are hesitant to stray too far from what they know.
It's like the familiar, but with an electric twist.
Exactly. And then there's the Rivian R1T.
Which you highlighted as well, yeah. What's the story with that one?
The R1T, it seems to be targeting the adventure crowd. It's got impressive off-road capabilities and a design that's more in line with what you'd expect from a rugged, outdoorsy vehicle.
So the electric truck for the off-the-grid type.
In a way, yes. It definitely speaks to a different set of priorities than the Cybertruck, which seems to be more focused on technology, design, and, well, making a statement.
So we've got a futuristic Cybertruck, a classic F-150 with a modern twist, and an adventurous Rivian. It seems like the electric truck market is finally starting to heat up.
It is an exciting time to be following this, but even with these new contenders, the Cybertruck remains a fascinating case study.
Because it's such a departure from what we're used to.
Exactly. It's really pushing the boundaries of what a pickup truck can be, and that's going to generate both excitement and skepticism.
And let's be real, controversy sells.
Yeah.
But before we get too caught up in all the hype, I think we need to circle back to something you brought up earlier, the interior.
Ah, yes. The Cybertruck's minimalist interior. Some might even say stark.
So we've talked about how the exterior is polarizing, but what about the inside? What's the consensus on that? So we've got this like super tough, futuristic exterior, but then you step inside and it's minimalist to say the least. A lot of the articles you flagged, they seem to find the Cybertruck's interior a bit lacking, especially compared to some of its competitors that are going all in on luxury features.
Yeah, it's definitely a point of contention. I mean, the Cybertruck's interior is a pretty big departure from those increasingly luxurious cabins you see in high-end trucks these days. You know, all that plush leather, wood grain accents, heated and cooled cup
All
holders.
the bells and whistles.
Exactly. You won't find any of that in the Cybertruck.
So it's more about function over form, even on the inside.
That seems to be the case. You know, one of the articles actually described the Cybertruck's interior as utilitarian chic.
Utilitarian chic.
Yeah, which I think is pretty accurate when you think about it. It's all about clean lines, durable materials, practicality over luxury.
Okay, I can see that. But the question is, will that fly with truck buyers who are used to a certain level of comfort? I mean, you found that study that said a good chunk of truck owners really care about interior comfort and features.
Absolutely, and that's the big question mark, isn't it? Is Tesla misjudging how important those features are to a lot of truck
If
buyers?
you gamble this for sure.
Totally. A gamble that might pay off. Or it could backfire, and buyers might be put off by what some articles called a, quote, surprisingly Spartan interior.
Ouch. So it's make or break time for the Cybertruck's interior. But I think this whole conversation has highlighted something important. This vehicle is all about polarization.
It really is. The Cybertruck is the love it or hate it phenomenon, but in a stainless steel package.
And that's probably why, even with all the potential downsides, it's still got everyone talking. It challenges everything we thought we knew about trucks.
Totally. It's a statement on wheels, but for anyone listening, the real question is it the right statement for you?
That's a good way to put it.
You've all done your research, you've heard the pros and cons, the hopes, the hype. Now it's about deciding what matters most to you as a potential buyer.
Do you love that radical Cybertruck design, or are you more drawn to the classic look of the F-150 Lightning? Off-roading in the Rivian R1T or tech-heavy cruising in the Cybertruck? Tough choices.
And maybe the most important question of all, are you okay with the uncertainties of being an early adopter for a vehicle this revolutionary?
Because, let's be real, there's still a lot of unknowns when it comes to the Cybertruck. How it'll actually perform, how it'll hold up over time, what kind of impact it'll have on the truck market as a whole.
It's a fascinating case study for sure. We'll be keeping a close eye on how it all unfolds.
As we all will be. But before we wrap things up, I want to shift gears for a moment and talk about something else you highlighted in those articles, the idea of the Cybertruck as a status symbol.
Ah, yes. The Cybertruck as a status symbol debate. That's an interesting one.
It is, because on the one hand, it's a Tesla, right? And Teslas have become synonymous with, well, a certain image.
Luxury, innovation, exclusivity, that sort of thing.
Exactly. But then on the other hand, it's a truck. And trucks traditionally have represented something completely different.
The ruggedness, practicality, working class values.
Right. So it's like these two worlds are colliding, and it's creating this really fascinating tension.
Totally. And that tension is what's fueling a lot of the debate.
Because some people are saying that the Cybertruck is going to be the ultimate status symbol, that it's going to be the car for celebrities, tech moguls, early adopters who want to make a statement.
And then there are others who are saying that the Cybertruck is going to be a flop, that it's
Ugh.
too weird, too expensive, too impractical to ever really catch on.
So who's right?
Honestly, it's too early to tell. I mean, we're still months, maybe even years away from seeing Cybertrucks on the road in any significant numbers.
True. But that's not stopping people from speculating.
And that's part of the fun, isn't it?
It is. I mean, half the fun of a car like this is imagining who's going to be driving it.
And what that says about them.
Exactly. But beyond all the speculation, there's one thing that's clear. The Cybertruck is generating a ton of buzz, and that buzz is translating into real-world interest.
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned all those articles you received from listeners, and then there are the pre-orders.
Hundreds of thousands of them last time I checked.
It's clear that Tesla has tapped into something with the Cybertruck. Whether that something is enough to revolutionize the truck market, well, that remains to be seen.
So we've got this, super tough exterior, futuristic even.
Sure.
But then you get inside, and it's minimal. That's one word for it.
Right.
You know, a lot of those articles, they pointed out how bare bones the Cybertruck's interior seems, especially compared to those other trucks we were just talking about, the ones that are practically drowning you in luxury features.
It's a fair point. I mean, this Cybertruck's interior, it's a real change of pace from those other high-end trucks, you know, the ones with the plush leather seats and the fancy wood grain. And don't even get me started on those heated and cooled cup holders.
They're really going all out these days, aren't they?
Tell me about it. But you won't find any of that in the Cybertruck. Nope, not a chance.
So it's all about function over form then,
Yeah.
even on the inside.
That seems to be the philosophy. I read one article that called it, get this, utilitarian chic.
Utilitarian chic.
Or-
Okay, I kind of see it.
Right. I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it? It's all clean lines, durable materials, just very practical, no nonsense, not a whole lot of flash.
I could see that. But will it be enough for buyers? I mean, we were just talking about how important interior comfort is to a lot of truck owners. You even found that study about it.
You're right, and that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Is Tesla way off base here? Are they totally underestimating how much those kinds of features matter to people who buy trucks?
It's definitely a risk, no doubt about it.
Oh, absolutely. A big risk. It could pay off. Who knows? Or it could totally backfire. Some articles even called the interior, get this, surprisingly Spartan. Can you imagine?
Ouch. It's got to sting a little. Sounds like the Cybertruck's interior is going to be a make-it-or-break-it factor for a lot of buyers. But this whole conversation, it really drives home one of the key points about this truck, doesn't it? This whole love it or hate it thing.
It's impossible to ignore. The Cybertruck is polarizing, clean and simple.
It's like they took that love it or hate it energy and wrapped it up in a stainless steel package.
You nailed it. And I think that's a big part of why people are still so obsessed with it, even with all the potential drawbacks we've talked about. It makes you think, it makes you question everything you thought you knew about trucks.
It's a real statement. But for everyone listening, the big question is it the right statement for you?
Exactly. You've heard all the arguments, weighed the pros and cons, considered the hype. Now it all comes down to what you need, what matters to you as a driver.
Are you drawn to that futuristic Cybertruck look? Or does something like the classic F-150 Lightning appeal to you more? Maybe hitting the trails in a Rivian R1T is more your style. Or maybe you're all in on the Cybertruck's tech. There are a lot of options out there these days.
And there's one more thing to consider, maybe the most important question of all. Are you ready to be an early adopter? Because this truck is something completely new, completely different.
It's uncharted territory. And with uncharted territory comes a certain amount of risk. We still don't know how the Cybertruck will perform in the real world, how it'll hold up over time. We don't even know what kind of long-term impact it'll have on the truck market.
It's a fascinating experiment, that's for sure. One that we're all going to be watching very closely.
And on that note, I think we're going to have to wrap things up. But hey, this is just the beginning of the conversation. To everyone listening, keep those questions in mind. Keep doing your research. This is an exciting time for the automotive industry, and it seems like there's something new to discover every day. Who knows? Maybe someday soon we'll all be cruising around in trucks that are even more innovative, more sustainable, and yes, maybe even more out there than the Cybertruck. Until next time.